Hey, my name is Grace. I read 18 books in August and September, and I want to talk about them today. So get yourself a cup of something warm and cozy, and here we go. Okay, first book I read in August was A Psalm for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers. 5 stars. I loved this book so much. It is like cozy fantasy. It basically is set in way in the future where robots, after existing with humanity for a long time, kind of go into the wild. And there is a tea monk who basically happens upon this robot, and just like warm, fuzzy, philosophical, deep conversations and sweetness ensue. So I loved it, and I cannot wait to read the second book in the duology. Next, I read Winter in Sokcho. This is just not my kind of book. Not really a whole lot happens. Don't feel like it really digs into the characters very much. I kind of equate it to almost like, I don't know, it was kind of boring, kind of dull. I mean, it won an award. It won the National Book Award. So objectively, it has good qualities and its merits. It just wasn't the type of book for me. But if you're wanting something kind of like, that's what this book is. Next, I read a new favorite, Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. First of all, if you are a Fleabag fan, this book has major Fleabag vibes. It's basically about our main character, not Meg, Martha, who suffers from mental illness, and we don't have language for what she's suffering with, which I liked and I appreciated in the book. Meg, the author, intentionally does not have words for what she's suffering with, but she is suffering, and as a result, it's affecting all of her loved ones and family members. And you're kind of in her internal world. So it's about, like, we'll just say depression. It's about mental illness, but it's really funny because aside from struggling with mental illness, Martha is kind of just like not a great person. Anyway, it was like heartfelt and funny, but I also really appreciated the portrayal of mental illness and how it affects an individual and the world that they have built around them. And so I would highly recommend it. I loved it. Next, I read a classic that I've been really interested in for quite a while, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Honestly, really could do without it. I was expecting like deep, philosophical, thoughtful, spiritual, and it was really kind of just like a parable, but it felt very on the nose to me. And I would it almost gave me Little Prince vibes, but I would rather read The Little Prince, which is maybe a hot take because this is a pretty popular book, but it just was not for me. Next, I read In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. You can probably tell. I really enjoyed this book. It is a very raw and unflinching portrayal memoir about an abusive relationship. I just thought it was incredible. I read this in one day. I couldn't put it down. While it is a memoir and it shares these memories and this like really deep, dark place that our author was in, the pacing of it and the like ambiance of it felt like a domestic thriller. It's just incredible. I can't recommend it enough. I'm so glad I finally got around to reading it. Next, I read a huge book on the internet. I mean, the internet has like been eating this book up. It was in my last very super exciting, thrilling vlog. I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Wonderful. Like an incredible portrayal of resilience, and just Jennette grew up in such a manipulative and abusive environment, and thankfully like made it out on the other side. And it explores her relationship with her mother, her relationship with religion, her relationship with being a child actor. And it was just so well done. I really enjoyed it. I think everyone should read it, especially given like the internet and how much like child stars are almost becoming more prevalent because like parents are filming their children more and posting about their children more, and like child stars are existing more than just in like conventional media, but on the internet as well. It's just really interesting. It gives you a lot to think about. So it was excellent. I highly recommend. Next, I read The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House by Audre Lorde. I previously said that this was a good primer, but I didn't say what for, a primer for what. Audre Lorde is a womanist scholar. Womanism is like, to dumb it down as much as possible, like Black feminism. And so I've been wanting to learn from her and kind of soak in her words. I believe she passed like fairly recently, like within the last couple years. I think her and Bell Hooks passed away pretty close together. And I want to read both of their works and learn from them. And so this was just like 3 essays kind of about womanism and women, and it was really good. I am excited to kind of read a more cohesive work in terms of like a book or where one subject is kind of the main focus, but I thought it was really good and I'm excited to read more from her. Next, I read Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This is basically a bunch of stories. It's fiction. It's a bunch of stories about women and non-binary folks in London and kind of an interconnected woven tale. I thought it was gorgeous, atmospheric. It kind of reads like a series of short stories where you are getting into the mind and into the life of all these different characters. I thought it was beautiful. And yeah, I would recommend this if you want something less plot focused. If you're really into character, this is a great like character heavy study. It was beautiful. Okay, and then the last book I read in August was a graphic novel, On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. This is just a beautiful, beautiful work. Just amazing. Amazing that one person did all of this. Like the dialogue, the plot, the gorgeous artwork. I don't know if you can just see like how cool it is. I loved it, and I'm really, really keen to read more graphic novels. So if you have any recommendations, please drop them down below because this was excellent. Okay, next in September, I started with Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. This was kind of weird. It was, the ending of this one really, really shook me. Like the final act climax situation was so out of nowhere and like really, really unexpected. It starts out kind of as this pregnant girl who develops this like friendship obsession with this mom who orders pizza from the pizza shop she works at, and it just kind of devolves from there. And it's a short read. It was wild, and I actually really enjoyed it. Next, I read The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. This is about a brothel in ancient Pompeii and the women that work there. Very much a examination of how women in that society were treated, how sex workers in that society were treated, what they needed to do to survive. And it really transports you back to the time. I really enjoyed the the friendships that existed in this book. And it was like not thrilling, not too exciting, but I've said this 100 times before. I really enjoy tales that are like, that take place in antiquity. I don't know why, but I really enjoyed books set in ancient Greece. This was in ancient Pompeii. It was no exception. I'm excited to read the second one. I think each book is going to kind of be about a different woman in this group of women. It was really compelling, as well as at times heartfelt, at times very upsetting. And I don't know, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I think I gave it like not quite 4 stars for me, but I would recommend it. Okay, next I went on vacation. So I got quite a bit of reading done in a short amount of time. The first book I read was My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. What better book to read on the beach than a rom-com, murder mystery rom-com? It was fine. It's not my favorite Tessa Bailey that I've ever read. However, it was, as all of her books are, just like compulsively readable, super fun. steamy, and just like a great book when you kind of need a reset, a palate cleanse. That's usually what romance is for me, and I had a really good time reading it. Next, I read Cult Classic by Sloane Crosley. First of all, this cover, just a moment for the cover. This was really fun. It was a really unique, just fun time. Basically about our main character, Lola. Lola keeps running into her ex-boyfriends. Just all of her exes, one right after the other. She keeps bumping into them. And she finds out pretty quickly that there's something behind this, that it's a little strange, that the game is afoot. It does end up being much more than just a series of coincidences. I thought it was funny, really interesting. I read it in one day. I mean, I had a lot of time given, but I just ran right through it and had a great time. And I really liked the pacing of it. I really liked the characters, the main character, as well as like her friends and the people around her. I thought they were all like fleshed out and they felt real to me. And I liked where it went, and kind of this air of like tension and mystery around it was really fun. So I would definitely recommend this if you're wanting something kind of groovy. Like, it felt groovy, and maybe that's partially because of the cover, but I don't know. It was just a really good time. Next is one of my favorite reads of the year so far, Babel by R.F. Kuang. I don't know if you can see at the bottom, but those are all of I didn't have any of my annotation tools on vacation, but those are all of my like dog-eared pages that I need to go back and add stickies to. This book, I freaking love this book. It was compelling, it was challenging, it was so informative and educational, it was thrilling, it was atmospheric. It's basically a dark academia where you follow Robin Swift, who is Chinese, set in Oxford, which is like a very, very white kind of colonist area. And you follow Robin and his friends in this kind of alternate universe where there is some light magic. And it is all about translation and, sorry, can you hear him snoring? He's down there, you probably can't. All about translation and colonization and oppression and what are appropriate, like how do we fight back? How do we combat that? It just is so rich, incredibly like researched. I kept saying while I was reading it, like, how did somebody write this? It's just so good. It is so good. So I loved this. I highly recommend it if you love dark academia. I've read quite a few. I've read The Secret History. I've read If We Were Villains. I really enjoyed those books. I love what this does to kind of turn the genre on its head and make it look at itself. Yeah, it's excellent. Okay, next, quite a pivot from the academic excellence of Babel. I got a Kindle Unlimited subscription. First of all, I tried to not support Amazon at whenever possible. That is the last resort. I saw a TikTok. Hold on, hear me out. I saw a TikTok from an independent author that explained that basically through, I sound like I'm lying to myself, and I hope I'm not, because I don't want to support Amazon. It's important to me that I don't. But basically, with Kindle Unlimited, as with like all the books that Amazon sells, they are not selling books to make money because they sell books at a loss. And you can read How to Resist Amazon and Why if you're curious more about this. But basically, like, Amazon sells books at a loss, so you'll buy other stuff from them, and so they can get your data. So it's kind of the same thing with Kindle Unlimited, but basically authors, from what I understand, authors get money for each page turn, like cents for each page turn, and Jeff Bezos gets nothing. That's the summary of the TikTok that I saw from an author on Kindle Unlimited. So I feel okay about that. Anyway, I read Challenge by Amy Dawes. I have been getting into my sports romance era. I was sad to come back from my vacation, and I needed something fun and spicy and easy to digest. So I read Challenge. a great time. I love soccer, I love romance, and I love a little steam, a little smut. And that's what you get here. I really don't have anything else to say. It was a good time. It was a good time. And if you like soccer, if you're looking for a soccer romance, I would recommend this one. Next, I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And it was a departure for me. I usually don't read spooky books. I usually don't read horror. Although as I film this, I am trying to expand my horizons a little bit. But I've been intrigued by Mexican Gothic for a while. It's basically a haunted house story turned, you'll have to read and see. But it was very atmospheric. I was really compelled to keep going and find out what was happening. And it was kind of spooky and kind of gross at points and kind of freaked me out. But I'm really glad that I finally read it. And I am very keen to read more from Silvia Moreno Garcia. And then next, after that one, I read another Amy Dawes soccer romance. I read Endurance. Didn't like this one as much as the first one. But the series is about these like four or five brothers, four brothers and a sister that are all heavily involved in like English Premier League soccer. And so I'm kind of saving the other ones in my back pocket for a rainy day. So I read the second one pretty shortly after the first one, and it was still fun. I didn't like it as much as the first one. The first one was more, I don't know, like fall for your, like an immediate connection, kind of a prohibited workplace romance. And the second one is like the best friend and the brother from the first book. And it was a fake dating, kind of hate to love, like antagonism to love. And it was fine. I like a little bit of a slow burn, not like crazy, but when they hook up like immediately in the book, then it's kind of like, all right, well, here we go. We're just continuing on with the scene. So that was that. Then the last book I read in September was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a pandemic book, but it was written in 2014, which when you read the book, it's so creepy that this book was written so far ahead of our actual pandemic that happened. I bet Emily St. John Mandel was shitting her pants when COVID-19 hit, because she was like, I was right. I was right. Of course, in this book, it escalates way more and is much more severe and like world ending than ours was, thankfully. But it basically follows, kind of jumps back in time to like leading up the first days of the pandemic, and then like several years, like decades after the pandemic, and kind of how the world has changed, and follows a bunch of different people, but mainly this like band of artists that kind of wander in this like caravan and perform. It had some cool parts to it. I wanted to love it and I didn't. It was just fine for me, but I can totally see why people do love it. For me, it either wasn't thrilling enough or it wasn't like pretty enough. I love a pretty book. I love flowery lyrical writing, and sometimes that's enough for me. Like if a book is just like written beautifully, a lot of my favorite books on this shelf are written by poets or are just like beautifully written, and that is enough to take me into that world and to enjoy that book. This had some of that, but not enough. And it also didn't have enough like thrilling, exciting stuff happening. It's kind of quiet for being what it's about. But that's just me. If you're interested, I would definitely pick it up. If anything, just to see how eerie and like bizarre it is that so much of what's depicted in this book mirrors what happened in real life. And yet this book was written like 6 years, math, 6 years before COVID-19. So just something to think about. So that's it. Those are the books that I read in August and September. I am really excited now that we're coming to the end of the year and that it is cooling down and the holidays are coming, because I am quite a mood reader. And so I'm trying to read like in October, kind of like fantasy or like spooky books or ghosty books. And then in November, like, and December, because I basically, both of those are like Christmas to me. I'm a Christmas person. And so I'm just excited to do more reading, cozy up by the fire with a cup of coffee or hot chocolate or a hot toddy or a hot buttered rum, and just relax and read and kind of go into hibernation. And I hope that you do the same. So if any of these books that I have mentioned today seem interesting to you, please let me know down below which ones you want to read or have read, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.